It was supposed to be my night. My 50th birthday. Fleming Steakhouse, downtown Chicago. A private dining room lit with soft golden chandeliers, 40 guests in tailored suits and designer dresses. Colleagues from Stephanie's network, producers, sponsors, her co-host from the morning show. A few of my friends, though they looked as out of place as I felt. The champagne flowed. The chatter was loud, effortless. And then, silence. Stephanie stood, her black sequin dress catching the light, glass of champagne raised high. The room leaned in. Cameras of iPhones rose, because when Stephanie Miller spoke, people listened. To my husband, Eric, she began, with that polished smile she'd practiced 1,000 times for live television. 50 years young, ladies and gentlemen. Applause, laughter. Then her eyes slid toward me, sharp as glass. And let's be honest, we all know who the real success story in this marriage is. A ripple of laughter spread through the room. My stomach clenched, but I kept my expression neutral. Eric still drives that same boring Lexus to work every day, she continued, her tone sugary but cutting. While I get to wake up in front of millions of viewers every morning. Not bad, right? She let the pause hang, then added, to the man who's been riding my coattails for 20 years. The laughter this time was louder. Some genuine, some nervous. My friend Daniel shook his head at the far end of the table, his jaw tight. But what broke me wasn't Stephanie's words. It wasn't even the pity in my colleague's eyes. It was Chloe's laugh, sharp, high-pitched, her phone already out as she whispered something to her friends for TikTok. And Ethan, my son, my 17-year-old boy, he laughed too. Not loudly, not cruelly, but enough. A smirk, a glance toward his mother, as if to say, she's right. Something cracked inside me. But I didn't argue. I didn't stand up to defend myself. I just smiled. The kind of smile that doesn't reach your eyes. Because silence, sometimes, is deadlier than words. No one in that room knew that the house Stephanie flaunted in interviews, the tuition Chloe boasted about to her sorority sisters, the entire life they paraded as her achievement. It was all built on me. On the investments I'd managed quietly for decades. On the trust my father left, which I had doubled, tripled, without ever once putting my name in flashing lights. They didn't know. They didn't care. And at that table, with 40 people laughing at my expense, I understood one truth. I had let them rewrite the story of our family, casting me as the prop in Stephanie's performance. I placed my napkin beside my untouched birthday steak. I stood. Stephanie blinked, surprised. Eric. But I didn't answer. I walked out, through the hushed whispers and awkward stares, out into the sharp February air. And as the door closed behind me, one thought crystallized with terrifying clarity. They thought I was invisible. They thought I was weak. But I was about to show them exactly what silence can build and what silence can destroy. I drove aimlessly that night. Chicago's streets blurred in the windshield, headlights streaking across wet asphalt. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Stephanie, Chloe, Ethan, but I didn't answer. Not yet. Not until I could hear my own thoughts again. I pulled into the parking garage of my office building on LaSalle. Not my employer's office. The corporation where I'd worked for 20 years knew me only as their chief financial officer, the dependable man in the gray suit who never sought the spotlight. This was different. My office. My space. A floor in a building I owned outright, through one of my holding companies. A detail Stephanie had never bothered to ask about. Inside, the silence wrapped around me. Files, binders, monitors, everything I needed to manage the portfolio I'd been building since I was 25. Real estate in Austin. Tech startups in Palo Alto. Medical equipment patents. Quiet, boring, steady, words Stephanie would use with disdain. But those boring plays had funded everything. The Lake Forest house she showcased in her magazine interviews, paid in cash, with dividends from a medical device company I'd backed before it went public. Chloe's tuition in New York, covered entirely by the trust I'd managed since my father's death, though Stephanie loved telling people Chloe was on scholarship. Ethan's private school, his basketball trips, the new SUV Stephanie gifted him for his 17th birthday, all me, all invisible. I never flaunted it, never lorded it over them. Because I believed we were a team. She in the spotlight, me in the shadows, both of us holding up the family from different ends. But tonight, in that dining room, I realized something brutal. In my silence, I'd allowed her to erase me. I wasn't a partner. I was a prop. The boring husband, the easy punchline to make her shine brighter. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. A lifetime of discipline, of restraint, of letting others take the credit. It had all led me here. Forgotten, diminished, humiliated. And then a thought surfaced, steady and unshakable. If silence could erase me, it could also destroy her. My phone buzzed again. Chloe this time. Dad, what the hell? Mom's freaking out. Why would you walk out like that? I typed, then erased. Typed again. Finally, I slid the phone face down on the desk. They had no idea who I really was. But they were about to find out. We weren't always like this. There was a time when Stephanie looked at me with admiration, not contempt. A time when my quiet steadiness was what she loved most about me. We met in our 20s. She was an ambitious intern at a local TV station, already practicing her camera-ready smile in every reflective surface she passed. I was in my first years at the corporation, buried in spreadsheets, learning to see patterns in numbers that others overlooked. Our first date? A hole-in-the-wall diner in Evanston. She laughed when I told her I liked balance sheets. God, you're boring, she said, but she squeezed my hand across the table. Boring in a good way. Solid. Reliable. For a girl chasing the spotlight, I was her anchor, and I liked being that for her. We married 3 years later. Chloe came, then Ethan. I worked long hours, but I made it home for dinner. Stephanie's career took off. Weekend segments, then local news, then the morning show. She sparkled in the glow of studio lights, while I kept us steady behind the scenes. For a long time, I thought that balance worked. She got her recognition, I got my quiet satisfaction. Different lanes, but the same road. But then, little by little, I noticed the shift. At dinner parties, she'd introduce me with a dismissive wave. This is Eric, my husband. He works in finance. As if finance was a synonym for invisible. At Chloe's school events, she'd gush about her own schedule, her latest ratings bump, barely acknowledging that I was the one who had arranged the donations, the scholarships, the quiet funding that kept the programs alive. The first time it really hit me was at a charity gala, 6 years ago. Stephanie had just come off stage after hosting the auction. She looked radiant, flushed with praise. I reached for her hand, but she pulled away. Not now, Eric. You're sweaty. Sweaty. That was what I was to her. Not a partner. Not the man who had built the foundation of everything we had. Just inconvenient. From then on, the cracks widened. She started correcting me in public, interrupting my stories, redirecting conversations. At first, I thought it was nerves or stress or ambition. But eventually, I saw it for what it was, contempt. And Chloe and Ethan? They learned from her. Chloe, with her biting teenage sarcasm, rolling her eyes whenever I spoke. Ethan, idolizing his mother's fame, parroting her dismissive tone. I told myself it was temporary. That Stephanie was under pressure. That kids grow out of it. But deep down, I knew they weren't just drifting from me. They were being taught to see me as unnecessary. And the worst part? I let them. It started with a lie so small it almost slipped past me. Almost. One Tuesday afternoon, I stopped by the station unannounced. I'd been downtown reviewing quarterly audits and thought I'd surprise Stephanie, maybe take her to lunch. God knows. It had been weeks since we'd eaten together without phones buzzing or producers hovering. The receptionist smiled politely when I asked for her. Oh, Mrs. Miller's already out. Lunch with the network's executive team. Of course, I said. I turned to leave, then paused. Could you let her know I stopped by? The receptionist hesitated. She left instructions not to be disturbed. My smile didn't falter, but something inside me shifted. As I waited for the elevator, a voice called out behind me. Mr. Miller? It was Melanie, one of the junior producers. She looked uneasy. She's not with the executives. She's with Ryan Carter. The producer? I asked, careful to keep my voice even. Melanie glanced around before lowering her tone. They've been having a lot of lunches lately. Just the two of them. Thought you should know. The elevator doors opened. Thank you, I said quietly, stepping inside. That night, Stephanie came home at 9. Perfume lingering, heels clicking, a shopping bag from Saks in her hand. Good day at the office? I asked. Exhausting. Lunch with the execs. Very productive. She kissed my cheek, tossed the bag on the couch. Bought something for you, actually. Inside was a silk tie. Deep navy, subtle pattern. For you to wear on Friday's gala, she said, smiling. You need to look sharp when we're on camera. On camera. Her words hung in the air. Was the tie a gift or a costume? Later, upstairs, I overheard her on the phone with her sister. Her voice carried through the half-open door. Eric? He's fine. Just watching sports or spreadsheets or whatever it is he does. No ambition. But at least he doesn't get in the way. I froze in the hallway, my chest tight. No ambition. That's what she thought of me. That's what she said behind closed doors. I looked at the tie still draped across my arm. Soft, expensive, elegant. Was it guilt? Camouflage? A bribe for my silence? I didn't confront her. Not yet. But that night, for the first time in years, I locked my office door and opened her phone bill. Scrolling through the numbers, one pattern leapt out at me. A single number, repeated, late at night. Calls stretching past midnight. Ryan Carter. Business calls don't last until 1 a.m. And suddenly, the silence I'd lived in for so long felt like a loaded weapon in my hands. For a week, I carried the knowledge like a stone in my chest. Ryan Carter's number. The late-night calls. The secret lunches. The perfume she didn't usually wear for me. I told myself it could still be business. Networking. Mentorship. But deep down I knew. To be sure, I reached out to an old college friend, Alex, now a private investigator. Discreetly, I said, I need to know. He didn't sound surprised. On Stephanie? On her. And Ryan Carter. While Alex dug into the details, I kept playing my part. I showed up for dinner. Paid bills. Drove Ethan to basketball practice. Sat at the table while Chloe scrolled through her phone. The perfect husband. The invisible father. But invisibility has its own cruelty. One night, Chloe was on FaceTime with her friends. She didn't know I could hear from the hallway. My mom's killing it. Network might give her her own primetime slot, she said proudly. Then, with a laugh, my dad? Oh God, he's just this boring accountant. Drives the same Lexus since forever. Literally the definition of midlife crisis without the crisis. Her friends howled with laughter. I closed my eyes. Not at the words, at the fact that she meant them. And Ethan? We were driving home from practice when I tried, gently, to bring it up. Your mom's been spending a lot of time with Ryan Carter, hasn't she? He shot me a look, irritated. So what? He's good for her career. He believes in her. Not like you. The words cut deeper than any affair ever could. Not like me. I asked quietly. You don't get it, Dad. Ethan said, shaking his head. Mom's actually going somewhere. She's a star. And you, he shrugged. You just exist. Just exist. That's what my son saw when he looked at me. Not the man funding his future. Not the man holding the family together. Just a placeholder in his mother's story. When Alex's report came a few days later, it only confirmed what I already knew. Photos of Stephanie and Ryan at dinner, too close across the table. Entering his condo late at night. Leaving the next morning. Circumstantial, maybe. But enough. More than enough. I should have felt rage. Betrayal. Heartbreak. But what I felt was colder. A clarity so sharp it could cut steel. Stephanie didn't just betray me. She trained my children to laugh at me. To dismiss me. To believe I was irrelevant. And now, they were all about to learn the cost of mistaking silence for weakness. I spent that weekend at my office on LaSalle. Alone. Lights low, monitors glowing, spreadsheets open like battle plans. For years, I'd used this office as a sanctuary. A place to think, to strategize, to build the quiet empire no one knew about. Now, it became something else, a war room. I reviewed every account, every trust, every holding company. The architecture of our lives was there in black and white, and all of it traced back to me. Stephanie had built an image, yes, a glittering facade for the cameras. But I had built the foundation. Without me, the facade would crumble like cardboard in the rain. One by one, I began making changes. I moved the children's credit cards under new accounts with modest limits. I set Chloe's tuition to draw from her own subtrust, no longer disguised as a scholarship. I closed Ethan's car lease and placed it under his name. Insurance, maintenance, gas, all his responsibility now. Then I looked at the bigger picture. The network, the show, the career Stephanie worshipped. A decade ago, when the station was on shaky ground, I'd quietly invested through one of my holding companies. Back then, Stephanie had begged me to do it. If you believe in me, Eric, you'll help me. This show could change everything. I had believed in her. I'd written the check. That investment had grown to nearly 15% of the station's operating capital. And now? I began drafting the paperwork to withdraw it. By Monday morning, the first ripples were already spreading. Chloe texted me in all caps. "Dad, why did my card decline?" Ethan stormed into the kitchen, furious. "The school says the SUV isn't insured anymore." "What the hell, Dad?" I looked at him calmly. "It's insured, under your name now. Time to take responsibility." "Are you kidding me?" he snapped. "Mom said you're doing this just to punish us. Because you can't handle her success." I didn't answer. Silence again. But this time, it wasn't weakness. It was power. Stephanie noticed too. That evening, she cornered me in the living room, her heels clicking against the hardwood. "What the hell are you doing, Eric?" she demanded. "The kids' accounts? The station investment? You're sabotaging everything." I set down my glass of bourbon and met her eyes. "No, I'm correcting the story." "What story?" "The one where you're the star, and I'm the joke." Her face went pale. For the first time in years, she looked at me as if she didn't recognize me. And she was right. Because the man standing before her now wasn't the invisible accountant she thought she could humiliate. He was the one pulling the strings. By the end of the week, the paperwork was ready. I signed the documents in my attorney's office, each stroke of the pen feeling like a blade slicing through the facade of our marriage. A decade of silent support, erased in a matter of minutes. The station didn't see it coming. My holding company had invested nearly 15% of their operating capital when they were desperate. That investment had grown into a cornerstone of their budget. Now, with one signature, it was gone. "Eric," my attorney said, sliding the folder back toward me, "you realize this will hit them hard. Especially her." "That's the point," I said. Calm. Measured. I wasn't a man lashing out. I was a man reclaiming balance. The following Monday, I arranged lunch with a contact who knew the network's board. Robert Langford, a veteran media investor. We met at the Metropolitan Club, high above the city, where the skyline stretched like glass towers of ambition. "Eric Miller," he greeted, surprised. "I didn't expect to hear from you. I thought you kept your distance from the media world." "I usually do," I said, pouring coffee. "But there are matters you should be aware of. Matters involving Ryan Carter and Stephanie Miller." I laid out everything. The late-night calls. The photos Alex had gathered. The risk to the network if it all came out. Robert listened, his face darkening. "Scandal is poison for advertisers," he muttered. "Exactly," I said. "And with my withdrawal, your cash flow is already unstable. Add a public affair between your producer and your star anchor, you'll bleed." Robert nodded slowly. "You've put us in a difficult position, Eric." "No," I said evenly. "I've put her in a difficult position. The network has choices. She doesn't." 2 days later, Stephanie stormed into our kitchen, her hair perfect, her nails gleaming, but her composure cracking. "What did you do?" she hissed. "Robert called me into a meeting today. They're freezing my contract." "My contract, Eric." I sipped my bourbon. "I told you. I'm correcting the story." "You can't just." "I already did." Behind her, Ethan appeared in the doorway, his face twisted with disgust. "God, Dad, do you even hear yourself? You're jealous. Pathetic. You can't stand that Mom's the star, so you're trying to drag her down with you." Chloe's voice chimed from upstairs. "He's ruining everything." Their anger washed over me like water off stone. I looked at my son, then my wife. "I'm not dragging anyone down," I said quietly. "I'm just removing the illusion that you ever stood without me." For the first time in 2 decades, Stephanie didn't have a comeback. She just stared. And in that silence, I saw it. Fear. The game had changed. And for once, I was the one writing the script. The shouting started before I even walked through the door. Stephanie's voice, sharp as broken glass, echoing down the hallway. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I set my briefcase down, loosened my tie, and stepped into the kitchen. Stephanie stood there, trembling with rage, her phone in hand. Chloe sat at the island, filming me with that smug little smirk, already crafting the narrative for her followers. Ethan paced like a caged animal, fists clenched. "You humiliated me at the station," Stephanie hissed. "You humiliated this family. They froze my contract. Advertisers are pulling back. Do you even understand what that means?" "I understand perfectly," I said, pouring myself a drink. "It means for once, you're dealing with reality, not your fantasy version of it." Ethan exploded. "Reality? Reality is you're destroying Mom's career because you're jealous. Everyone sees it. Everyone." He slammed his fist on the counter. She's the one who worked for this. You've done nothing. Nothing? My voice stayed calm, but inside, something coiled tight. Who paid for your school, Ethan? For your SUV? For those sneakers you're wearing? He sneered. Mom did. Mom and her work. Not you. The laugh that escaped me was bitter, hollow. Stephanie's eyes narrowed. What's funny? What's funny? I said, leaning against the counter. Is how well you've trained them. Chloe parrots your lines on social media. Ethan repeats your insults to my face. You've rewritten the story so thoroughly, they don't even know who built the stage you're performing on. Stephanie's lips curled. Because you didn't build anything, Eric. You hoarded money. Numbers on a screen. I built a career, a reputation. People know me. They respect me. Until they didn't, I said softly. Her face flushed crimson. She stepped closer, lowering her voice, but not her venom. You think you've won something here? You haven't. You've destroyed our family. The kids hate you. And soon, everyone else will too. Chloe looked up from her phone. She's right, Dad. You're pathetic. This little revenge thing, it just makes you look smaller. Ethan added, his voice dripping with disdain. You're nothing without her. The three of them stood there, united in contempt. My wife, my daughter, my son, and I was utterly alone. But instead of breaking me, the realization solidified something deep inside. Because when you have nothing left to lose, you're finally free to do whatever it takes. I set my glass down, meeting each of their eyes in turn. Calm, cold, unflinching. You think you hate me now, I said. Just wait. The room went silent. For the first time, it was my silence that terrified them. The news broke on a rainy Thursday morning. Headlines on media blogs. Whispers in boardrooms. A source close to the network leaked that Stephanie Miller's contract had been suspended pending an internal review. The reason? Allegations of an inappropriate relationship with senior producer Ryan Carter. By noon, the internet had its story. Some claimed she'd been caught in his condo. Others said he manipulated her career. None of it mattered. In television, perception is reality, and Stephanie's image was crumbling. At home, the chaos was deafening. Chloe stormed into the living room, her phone buzzing nonstop. Do you see what's happening? Everyone's texting me about Mom. They're saying she slept her way into the anchor chair. She glared at me, eyes blazing. This is your fault. You set this up. Ethan was no calmer. He threw his basketball bag against the wall. Coach asked me today if the rumors were true. Do you know how humiliating that is? You've destroyed our family name, Dad. Do you even care? I looked at him steadily. Your mother made her choices. She built her reputation on lies. Don't blame me for the foundation cracking. Bullshit, he shouted. You're jealous, and you're punishing us because you couldn't keep up with her. Stephanie appeared in the doorway then, pale, her makeup smeared, the shine gone from her eyes. For the first time in 20 years, she didn't look like the woman on TV. She looked small, beaten. Eric, she whispered, her voice trembling. Please fix this. Call Robert. Call whoever you need to. I can't lose my career. I set my bourbon glass down, the ice clinking in the silence. Fix this. I repeated. After you humiliated me in front of our friends? After you trained our kids to see me as nothing? No, Stephanie. You fix this. If you can. Her lips parted as if to argue, but no words came. She turned and fled upstairs, Chloe following close behind. Ethan stayed a moment longer, glaring at me with pure hatred. You're pathetic, he spat. You'll die alone, and no one will even remember you. I didn't flinch. I didn't respond. I just met his eyes until he finally looked away. That night, I sat alone in the quiet house, the storm rattling the windows. They thought I'd lost everything, but they were wrong. They were the ones falling, and I was the one who had finally stopped pretending to hold them up. 2 weeks later, it was official. Stephanie Miller's contract was terminated. Ryan Carter was quietly let go, his name scrubbed from the station's credits. The network spun it as a strategic restructuring, but in Chicago's media circles, everyone knew the truth. She tried to salvage her image, issued a tearful statement about prioritizing family, hired a PR firm, even floated a podcast idea. But doors that once swung wide for her now slammed shut. The sponsors vanished. The calls stopped. Her world, built on spotlight and applause, had gone dark. At home, Chloe's credit card had been declined one too many times. She transferred from NYU to a state school, resentful and bitter. Ethan's SUV sat idle in the driveway, insurance unpaid, while he worked part-time shifts at a sporting goods store. Both of them still glared at me as if I'd ruined their lives. Maybe I had. Or maybe I'd just shown them who really paid for the illusion they'd been living in. Stephanie moved into a small apartment in Lincoln Park, stripped of the luxury she'd once flaunted. One evening, she showed up at my office. No cameras, no sequins, just a plain sweater and jeans. Her voice shook. "I lost everything, Eric," she whispered. "But the worst part is, I lost you. And I didn't even see it happening until it was too late." I studied her. The woman who once lit up rooms now looked like just another tired face in the crowd. There was no triumph in me, no gloating. Just clarity. "You didn't lose me," I said quietly. "You threw me away." Tears welled in her eyes. Can we start over? Not as husband and wife, maybe, but as people who once mattered to each other?" I didn't answer right away. I just looked out the window. At the city skyline I owned a piece of in ways she'd never understand. Finally, I said, "I don't know. That depends on whether there's anything left in you that isn't performance." She nodded, wiping her face. For the first time in years, there was no script. No audience. Just raw, uncomfortable truth. When she left, the office was quiet again. I poured myself a bourbon and sat back in the leather chair, the city lights flickering below. Stephanie had her spotlight. Chloe and Ethan had their illusions. But I had something stronger. Silence. The kind that builds. The kind that destroys. The kind that finally, after 50 years, set me free.